Glad tidings, rapscallions, it's me, Mucky Mitts, and we are back for another unedited, no bells and whistles, no fancy pants, no camera, no special lighting, no nothing, just raw, unedited content, and that is called It's Okay to Suck and Start Again. The reason it's unedited is because simply we can't edit anything out of our lives. Nothing is flawless, nothing is perfect, nothing is ever going to be exactly as we like, and unfortunately we live in a world where everything's apparently perfect, and social media is a benchmark that people try to live up to, which in reality isn't real. It's a simulation. It's, you know, most people on social media that pretend to be living a perfect life, they're probably not living a perfect life, and if they are, fair play to them, fantastic, that's what we, you know. And but what it is about, it's okay to suck and start again, it's just basically me, a middle-aged man, rambling on about past failures and books that I've read and maybe other things that I've tried in life that have worked for me or may not have worked for me, and hopefully inspiring other people. Now, if you follow my shorts, you'll know that today is day 52 since I decided to hot tail and tried my bestest to move back to Australia. But today we're going to talk about something different because I've been inspired by an experience that I've had personally today. Normally I do youth work on a Monday, but today we had a youth work staff day where the charity that I work for got everybody who is involved, or most of the people that are involved in the charity, to come, and we tried our, I hope I don't say this one, kintsugi, which is the Japanese art of putting things back together with gold and making them more beautiful, which is a really good sort of, as soon as I started doing it, I was like, this is a really good, and we was listening to some of the stories, and Rachel, who led the project, who leads the project, who's got a really amazing project, and I really need to, I've got a postcard here. If you want to check out her website, it's www.rachelho.co.uk, and what she does is make scarred pottery. And basically, whereas kintsugi is something where maybe you drop something and then you fuse it all back together, these scars are intentionally put into a little pot, into a ceramic pot that Rachel makes, and then she fixes it with gold, and then she gives it out. And now she, like, over the last few years, she's been building up this project, and she's gone from strength to strength, from just randomly putting little pots around Stoke-on-Trent for people to find, and just leaving them there for people to find, and, you know, hopefully that they will in turn, you know, leave a note on the website that's saying where they found it and stuff. And it's grown into something amazing, and I would really urge you to check it out because I think it's really good. Some of the stories that we heard today have been really inspiring, and thus inspired my video for today, which I did tell Rachel, I was like, I'm gonna get, when I do this, okay, it's to suck and start again. And I think this embodies something that I'm very passionate about myself. As a recovering alcoholic who's been sober for 5 years, I understand that, you know, scars are everlasting, and every day we are, for most people who've recovered from addiction might tell you, there's always that little voice inside your head that's saying it's okay if you just want a little beer. A red hot day like today here in the UK, when everyone's sat in the beer gardens and you're walking by and you're looking and going, that looks really refreshing, you know, to be able to abstain for that or whatever else, you know. And it's not just, you know, let's not just leave it to drugs and that, you know, and alcohol, you know. Remember, gambling's an addiction, and eating can be an addiction, like and many other things, you know, just hurting yourself basically, like anything that can be overdone. And, you know, even exercising can be self-harm, like to a point where you're really doing it too much and you're causing yourself. So you got it. Like, I did a during my psychology course, we did a unit on self-harm and self-injury, and, you know, it really is, there is a difference, you know. Like, self-harm is, you know, basically hurting yourself, but it's not quite as, but self-injury is obviously where you're sort of doing something a bit more nefarious to yourself, and things like that. So I think as well, when you think about like the scars that people are left with from that, and you know, they're very, those things, even when they're recovering from that, and sort of maybe move on later on in life, they're still going to have those scars. And one thing that really stood out for me today, and it really sort of stuck with me, was there was a story, and it was like, I used to hate my scars, but now I realise that they complete me, or words to that effect. And I realise, that's it. And like I say, that really does embody and encapsulate a lot of what this is about, my It's Okay to Suck and Start Again series, because I want people to know that it's okay to fail, that we're not perfect by any means. Nobody's perfect. And we're aiming for perfection, and if you aim for perfection, you're going to be disappointed every time, because nothing is perfect. And that's why I don't edit these videos. That's why there's no fancy lighting. I do edit a little bit, just maybe if I've got like a bit of a, just to sort of like, I don't know, I put an odd filter on or whatever and just brighten it up a little bit, just so it's not so dingy. But other than that, I don't, if I say something wrong, or I don't quite, if I stutter on my words or something, I don't edit that out, because I've said it, it's happened, it's real. And that's what I want this to be about. And I'm not bothered whether, if people watching, oh God, he can't get his words out. Oh, all right, okay. So we're all, you must have never made a mistake in your life. When, let's be honest, there's not a single person on this earth who hasn't made a mistake at some point. So I'm also on a bit of a mission at the moment to read a book a week. And in the last 3 weeks, I have read The Psychology of Money, which is very good, because it makes you think differently about how you spend your money, and that's very good. And as a result of that, last week I didn't spend money for 4 days. I didn't spend money for 4 days the week before that, and I didn't spend money for 1 day. And at the beginning of the year, my aim was not to spend money 3 days a week. So that kind of balances out, and hopefully if I can get back to that over this next month, which is, I'll come back to that anyway. The Chimp Paradox, which is a mind management book, and it breaks down how your brain works, how we've got two separate brains that work against us. We've got our more primitive brain, which is the chimpanzee brain, which is like very emotional driven, doesn't like, acts on feelings and emotions, where we've got the human brain, which is a little bit less developed and a little stronger, less strong than the chimp brain. And we have to sort of like basically learn to manage the chimp, because we can't wrestle it, because it's 5 times stronger than us. But we have but it gives you a lot of different coping mechanisms and systems to help. And The Power of Habit, actually I read The Power of Habit before The Chimp Paradox. I've read 2 out of 3 of those books already in the past, and it's really interesting to reflect back on both The Chimp Paradox, because when I read The Chimp Paradox and The Power of Habit, but like both times I was drinking, I was doing other things that are not legal in the past, and it wasn't very good. And it's quite interesting to see the person that I have. So in a way, I think the book's worked. Do you know what I mean? I mean, the first ever book that I did read was the first ever self-help book was The Easy Way to Stop Smoking, and that's kind of how I knew self-help books work, because after 4 days, I've read that in 4 days, and I stopped smoking on the 5th. So that's pretty good, isn't it? I don't get me wrong, I did start again, but then I used the book again to stop, and then I used the same principles to help me get off the wheel of alcohol. So when I did stop drinking years and years and years ago, I managed to use the same principles to get me off the booze. And obviously I felt sometimes, and again, going back to It's Okay to Suck and Start Again. Look, if you are trying to get over some form of addiction, whatever it is, whatever is keeping you, trapped and I'll just show you a picture of one of these pops, actually, because this is really lovely photo. I'm sorry it's folded in the middle, but you know, if you can just see there, that's like the gold scar there, and these lovely little pots that Rachel makes and gives away, and I think it's really amazing. I would love you to check her website out. So that I'll just say that again, it's www.rachelho.co.uk, or alternatively you can find her on Instagram or Facebook. Sorry, I've just walked home in the heat, so I'm very thirsty. Yeah, so again, the principles that I'm learning from a lot of these books is something that I'm thinking, right, I'm trying to work out where I go with this. It's okay to suffer and start again, because for a simple reason, I don't want to just talk about myself, but the problem is I don't have a lot of people viewing these videos, so I don't get a lot of feedback. I don't have a lot of comments. I don't have a lot of conversations through having these videos, so it's very hard to sort of like talk about different things. Now, other things that I've thought about is like next week I'm moving into an apartment, my own apartment, and that might help me do different content, because I won't be just sat in my bedroom anymore. I'll have a full apartment to myself, which I can turn one room into a bit of a studio where I can do things. I can also use the kitchen where I know I'm definitely not going to be disturbed. And one thing that I've wanted to do is like, you know, basically things like, I'm very passionate about good food, as in like healthy food, but being able to afford healthy food. Because I think one of the dynamics is when people, I am a big believer in, you know, what you put into yourself really does affect your mood. And a lot of people eat bad food, as in like bad for you food, convenience food, and it has a knock-on effect into the general mood. And I think that is something that I would like to do. At the moment, I am on a mission trying to cut down sugar. So I've been using alternative, because going back to the power of habit, and I've just started reading the Atomic Habits as well, which actually builds and nods a lot back to the Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. You know, like how we build systems. So you have like, okay, so we have a cue, a reward, and so we have a routine, a cue, a routine, and a reward loop. And you know, so the cue will be I finish work, the reward will be, you know, like the routine will be you go to work, you finish work, and then after that you might fancy a beer, or you know, and everything becomes systematic. Everything, let me do all these things without thinking, and rather than like do something that's good for us. You know, like I finish my evening meal and I want something sweet, because that's what I've always done, like over the last few years. So what I tried to do for weeks is just have yogurt and fruit, which is good for a while, but it's just not the same, is it, like as having a bar of chocolate. So I decided, rather than having a bar of chocolate, I'd see if I could make like a healthy version of a cake. And I started off making a blueberry muffin cake, which was just yogurt, protein powder, an egg, crushed banana, and then porridge oats, and a bit of vanilla essence, and some blueberries. And I may or may not have put some chocolate chips in there just to give some sweet things. But if you saw how much sugar I normally eat on an evening, and you see how much I'm eating now, for the first week I was very, very irritable. I wasn't cool to be around. Maybe that was the weather as well, though. But this week I've started making chocolate brownies out of cottage cheese. Would you believe it? Cottage cheese, bananas, everything's got cottage cheese and bananas in, basically. So be amazed what you can do with some cottage cheese and some natural yogurt and some bananas. I found another recipe for a carrot cake that I'd like to do as well. So all these things, I'm thinking, well, you know, rather than me just sitting in a chair telling you everything that I've done in my life and the main reason I do this is because I want people to see that I'm a real person that's done real things and experienced real things, and I've overcome real things. But I also know that not everybody is in the same mindset. So, you know, it's not, oh, I did this. You know, like, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be like, well, if I gave up alcohol, you should give up alcohol. You know, if you can control your alcohol consumption, amazing. If you can control your diet, brilliant. If you mitigate everything else, then that, you know, if you are Peter, you know, Peter the perfect person, or Philippa the perfect person, then right on. I'm happy for you. I genuinely am, because, like, you know, one thing that I could never really understand was how people could go for 1 pint, and I used to laugh at those people back in there. What, you coming for one? Just one? Yeah. I'd have 1 pint, get up, goodbye. And you used to think they were crazy. You used to think, oh God, look at that. That's a... And now I realise what level, like, of envy I must have had to be able to watch somebody who could literally get up after that first pint and go home, whereas I would have dragged myself into a stupor. But that's the, you know, that is the attitude that we have in the UK towards alcohol as well. Like, you know, let's be right. You know, it doesn't matter what we do in the UK. It has to circulate around. You know, everything revolves around alcohol. Like, my social life has took a massive dip, and I'm sure there are other things I could be doing. But to be quite honest, I realised how tolerant of people alcohol made me, because now I'm just like, whereas I enjoyed today. You know, we did something different. We made a little pot, a scar pot, and, you know, I'll look forward to showing you this in a couple of weeks, maybe next week we'll have them back. But yeah, so essentially, my overarching point, again, I'm trying to get these down to 20 minutes, is, look, everything has a system. Everything you want to do within your life, whether it's to go traveling, whether it's to stop drinking, whether it's to get in shape, all starts with, first of all, some accountability and understanding that nobody's perfect. Everybody's made mistakes. Everybody will continue to make mistakes, and nobody on this on this earth is remotely close to being perfect. And we can't judge ourselves next to people on social media, because one of my favourite quotes ever is, comparison is the thief of all joy. And I genuinely believe that that is absolutely spot on, because, you know, when you're comparing yourself of somebody who maybe might go home and cry themselves to sleep at night, you just don't know. There's some people who they talk a good talk and they put on a good act, and I hope they don't. You know, but you can have a Ferrari and be lonely. You know, just as some people can live in squalor, or maybe not have all the trappings of modern life, and be happier than anybody because they've got a family around them and they absolutely adore them. Nothing's quite as it seems, and like, this is why I think today doing the kintsugi has been very much uplifting and quite motivational for me today. And I would, if you could find some way of doing this, I would really look into it. If you're near me in you know, Cheshire, in East Cheshire East, then I would honestly consider seeking Rachel out and having a session. If you work with kids, or, you know, you work with people who like recovering with addictions or something, like, to do that little group session that we've done today inspired lots of conversations. And, you know, again, just in awe of the project that is, you know, that is in the mix. So I'm going to love you and leave you. Excuse me, I'm going to love you and leave you. I'm going to keep this under 20 minutes. It's been an absolute pleasure as always. I hope you can give me a little follow or subscribe if you're not already. If you don't, then I wish you well anyway. And please check out Rachel Ho at www.rachelho.co.uk. Toodle pip, goodbye, see you later.